At 83, Paul McCartney finally tells the truth about George Harrison. Paul McCartney was born James Paul McCartney on June 18, 1942, in Liverpool, England. His journey, from a working-class boy growing up after the war in Britain to a famous musician and cultural icon, is one of hard work, talent, and vision. McCartney's early years were shaped by his family's love of music. His father, Jim McCartney, was a jazz musician who played the piano and trumpet, while his mother, Mary, worked as a nurse. Something terrible happened when Paul was only 14 years old. His mother died from breast cancer. This loss affected him deeply, and later influenced some of his most emotional songs, such as the classic Let It Be, inspired by a dream of her. The song became a source of comfort for millions of people around the world, who had also experienced loss. In many ways, his mother's passing taught him early on about the power of music to heal and connect people during their darkest moments. McCartney's musical journey began when he met John Lennon at a church fair in 1957. John was impressed by Paul's ability to tune a guitar and remember lyrics, so he invited him to join his band, the Quarrymen. This meeting would be remembered as one of the most important moments in popular music. Together, Lennon and McCartney formed one of the most successful songwriting partnerships of all time, writing hundreds of songs that defined a generation. When the Beatles came out in the early 1960s, their combination of talent, charm, and new ideas changed the course of music forever. McCartney, as the band's bass player and one of its lead singers, played a vital role in creating their unique sound. His melodic bass lines, flexible voice, and ability to write both tender love songs and energetic rock tunes made him one of the group's most important members. He brought a sense of musicality that made even the simplest songs feel rich and layered, something that would become a trademark of the Beatles' sound. Throughout the Beatles' quick rise to fame, McCartney wrote some of their most loved songs, including Yesterday, Hey Jude, Let It Be, and Blackbird. Each song showed his amazing ability to blend melody and emotion, touching listeners across cultures and generations. While Lennon often provided a more thoughtful and rebellious edge, McCartney brought melodic skill and a romantic feel, creating the perfect balance that defined the Beatles' genius. Even as the group tried groundbreaking studio techniques and new music styles, McCartney's artistry remained at the core of their growth. He was deeply involved in making albums like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which became a symbol of 1960s counterculture and one of the most praised albums in music history. The album showed that rock music could be more than just entertainment. It could be art, pushing boundaries and challenging what people thought music could be. After the Beatles broke up in 1970, McCartney faced the difficult task of reinventing himself as a solo artist. Despite the huge pressure and attention, he succeeded brilliantly. His first solo album, McCartney, featured the classic Maybe I'm Amazed, a heartfelt love song dedicated to his first wife, Linda Eastman. Together, Paul and Linda formed the band Wings, which achieved huge commercial success throughout the 1970s. With hits like Band on the Run, Live and Let, Die, Jet, and Silly Love songs, Wings' worldwide tours and chart-topping albums proved that McCartney could do well outside of the Beatles, further cementing his legacy as one of the most successful musicians of all time. The band became known for their energetic live performances and their ability to create catchy, memorable songs that appealed to audiences of all ages. Even as he entered his 60s, Paul McCartney showed no signs of slowing down. His passion for music remained as strong and unstoppable as it had been during his youth with the Beatles. Rather than going into retirement or relying only on his legendary past, McCartney continued to tour the world, performing to sold-out arenas filled with multiple generations of fans. His concerts became celebrations, not only of his incredible musical history, but also of his lasting creativity. Young fans who had discovered his music through their parents stood alongside those who had witnessed Beatlemania firsthand, creating a unique atmosphere of shared musical heritage. He was known for performing long shows, often lasting nearly 3 hours, where he played songs from his entire career, From early Beatles hits like Hey Jude and Let It Be, to his solo classics such as Band on the Run and Maybe I'm Amazed, his energy on stage went against his age, fascinating audiences with his excitement, humor, and ability to connect deeply with listeners. McCartney's touring schedule took him to nearly every continent, and he became one of the few artists in history who could fill stadiums decades after first becoming famous. During this time, McCartney also continued to record new music, proving that his creative spark had not faded with time. In 2000, he released Exi Cor Meum, Behold My Heart, an ambitious classical album that showed his versatility as a composer. This work, written in Latin and English, was a deeply personal project inspired by the memory of his late wife, Linda McCartney. It was the result of nearly 8 years of effort, and reflected McCartney's growing interest in orchestral and choral music. The album's premiere took place at the Royal Albert Hall in London, and was performed by the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields and the Boys of Magdalen College Choir, Oxford. Critics praised its emotional honesty and melodic beauty, describing it as one of his most heartfelt works outside the rock genre. Exi Cor Meum not only earned McCartney a Classical Brit Award, but also established him as a serious composer capable of bridging the gap between popular and classical music. In 2007, McCartney returned to his rock roots with Memory Almost Full, an album filled with thoughts on life, aging, and nostalgia. Recorded partly during the breakdown of his marriage to Heather Mills, the record carried both deep thought and strength. Songs like Ever Present Past, Dance Tonight captured McCartney's ability to balance lightheartedness with deeper emotional insight. Many fans saw the album as a meditation on death and legacy, with McCartney himself later admitting that some of the tracks were inspired by thoughts of his own life's journey. The album was also notable for being released under his new partnership with Starbucks' Hear Music label, showing his willingness to adapt to modern changes in the music industry. It received critical praise and commercial success, debuting in the top 5 in both the UK and the US charts. Then in 2008, McCartney once again reinvented himself with Electric Arguments, a bold collaboration with producer Youth under their experimental project named The Firemen. Unlike the duo's previous largely instrumental albums, Electric Arguments featured McCartney's vocals and spontaneous songwriting recorded quickly over 13 sessions. The result was an energetic and adventurous blend of rock, folk, and ambient sounds that surprised critics and fans alike. Tracks like Sing the Changes and Nothing Too Much, Just Out of Sight showed a raw improvisational quality rarely heard in McCartney's polished pop productions. The album received widespread praise for its freshness and fearless creativity, proving that even after more than 4 decades in music, McCartney was still willing to take risks and explore new artistic territory. Paul McCartney's married life has been a fascinating journey that reflects not only his personal growth, but also his lasting capacity for love, strength, and companionship through the different stages of his extraordinary life. Each of his marriages tells a unique story, from his deep artistic and emotionally fulfilling partnership with Linda Eastman, to the stormy and highly publicized union with Heather Mills, and finally to the calm, mature love he found with Nancy Shevell. Paul McCartney's first marriage to Linda Eastman was one of the most admired and lasting celebrity unions of the 20th century. They married on March 12, 1969 at Marylebone Register Office in London, during the height of Beatlemania, when McCartney was still a member of the world's most famous band. Linda, an accomplished photographer and animal rights advocate, had already made a name for herself as one of the few female rock photographers of the 1960s, capturing iconic images of musicians like Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, and the Rolling Stones. Her shared passion for music, creativity, and nature instantly connected her with Paul, and the two became inseparable. The McCartneys were famous for their genuine affection and down-to-earth family life, often avoiding the typical rock star glamour in favor of raising their children, Heather, Mary, Stella, and James, in the countryside. Together they formed the band Wings in the early 1970s, embarking on a successful post-Beatles musical chapter that brought Paul hits such as Band on the Run, and Live and Let Die. Linda's influence went beyond music. She inspired Paul to become a vegetarian and an advocate for animal welfare, leading to the creation of the Linda McCartney vegetarian food brand. Their marriage lasted nearly 30 years, until Linda's death from breast cancer in 1998, an event that left McCartney devastated. He described her as his soulmate and lifelong partner, often saying that not a day goes by without thinking of her. After several years of sadness and being alone, McCartney entered a new chapter in his life when he met Heather Mills, a former model and charity campaigner, in 1999 at a charity event. The two began dating soon after, and their relationship quickly became the focus of intense media attention. They married in June 2002 in a fancy ceremony at Castle Leslie in Ireland. At first, their union seemed to represent Paul's hopeful comeback after the heartbreak of Linda's passing. Heather was known for her humanitarian work, particularly in campaigns supporting amputees and landmine victims, after she herself lost a leg in a 1993 motorcycle accident. However, their marriage was marked by increasing public attention and personal tension. The couple had a daughter, Beatrice, in 2003, but by 2006 their relationship began to fall apart amid accusations, media battles, and bitter legal disputes. Their divorce in 2008 became one of the most high-profile and bitter separations in British celebrity history, with details of their private life exposed to the press and public. Despite the controversy, McCartney handled the ordeal with grace and dignity, focusing on his music and his role as a father to his young daughter. In 2011, McCartney found love again with Nancy Shevell, a businesswoman and member of the board of the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Their relationship, in contrast to his previous marriages, was marked by quiet stability and mutual respect. Shevell, a longtime friend of McCartney's circle and a distant cousin of Barbara Walters, shared Paul's appreciation for privacy and balance. They married on October 9, 2011 at the Old Marylebone Town Hall in London, the same place where McCartney had married Linda more than 4 decades earlier. The ceremony was intimate and elegant, reflecting their mature bond and deep understanding of one another. Nancy, who had previously been married for over 2 decades before meeting Paul, brought a sense of calm and companionship that suited his later years. Their marriage has lasted peacefully, often described by friends and the media as one of quiet happiness, based on shared values and genuine affection. At the age of 83, Paul McCartney has reached a stage in his life where thinking back seems to flow as naturally as music once did through his guitar strings. With a career spanning over 6 decades, he has seen friends, fame, and fortune rise and fall around him. Yet few relationships have carried as much weight or as much unspoken emotion as the one he shared with George Harrison. For years, the public has wondered about the true nature of their bond, often clouded by rivalry, pride, and the mystery that surrounded the Beatles. Now, in his later years, McCartney has chosen to speak openly, not with bitterness or nostalgia, but with the tenderness of a man finally ready to tell the truth. "George was like a little brother to me," McCartney admits, his voice softened by time. "When we were young, I always felt protective of him. He was the youngest in the group, but he had this quiet confidence. You couldn't push him around for long." McCartney recalls their earliest days traveling through Liverpool and Hamburg, playing in small clubs and living off pennies, when George's shy smile and precise guitar playing began to shape the sound that would soon conquer the world. Those early days were filled with long nights, cramped spaces, and a hunger to prove themselves. They learned together, made mistakes together, and slowly discovered what would become the Beatles' sound. "He was always trying new things," McCartney continues. "He'd find a chord none of us had ever used before, and suddenly the whole song would change." But McCartney also admits the tension that sometimes came between them. As the Beatles grew, creative clashes became unavoidable. Paul's perfectionism and George's desire for artistic independence often collided. "I was probably too bossy," McCartney admits with a regretful grin. "I had this vision of how things should sound, and sometimes I didn't give George enough space to express himself. Looking back, I wish I'd encouraged him more." He pauses, thinking about what so many fans sensed, but never heard confirmed. That Harrison's frustration at being overshadowed by Lennon and McCartney's dominance left lasting scars. George had these incredible songs. Something, Here Comes the Sun. And when I heard them, I realized he didn't need anyone's approval. He'd found his voice. In recent interviews, McCartney has been especially open about the final years of their friendship. When Harrison was battling cancer, the two reunited privately, putting aside old grievances. We sat together for hours, just talking and holding hands, McCartney reveals softly. We didn't talk about the Beatles or fame. We talked about gardening, family, love, the real things that matter. I could feel the peace in him. The moment left a lasting impression on McCartney, who admits it brought him a sense of closure. When I left that day, I knew it would probably be the last time I saw him. But I also knew we were okay. There was nothing left unsaid. Even now, McCartney keeps George's memory close. He often performs something in concert, beginning on a ukulele, Harrison's favorite instrument, before the band joins in. I can feel him there with me, Paul says with a gentle smile. It's like he's laughing at me from the other side, saying, "You finally got it right, mate." The audience can sense that emotional connection too. It's not just a performance, but a tribute, a spiritual reunion between two brothers whose love lasted beyond all the noise of fame. These moments on stage have become sacred to McCartney, a way to keep the conversation going with a friend he deeply misses. George's interest in spirituality and Eastern philosophy also left a deep mark on Paul's life, though it took years for him to fully appreciate it. In the late 1960s, when George became fascinated with meditation and Indian music, Paul was skeptical and more focused on the Western pop sound. "I thought he was going a bit far with all the spiritual stuff," McCartney admits. But George was searching for something deeper, something beyond the screaming crowds and the #1 records. He wanted meaning, and he found it. Now, looking back, Paul realizes that George's spiritual journey was genuine and brave. He wasn't trying to be trendy or mysterious. He truly believed in finding peace within yourself, in connecting with something bigger than fame or money. That takes courage, especially when the whole world is watching you. McCartney also reflects on how George's quiet nature often made him seem distant, but it was actually a sign of his depth. George didn't need to be the loudest person in the room. He observed, he listened, and when he spoke, it meant something. "I was always talking, always moving, but George taught me the value of silence, of just being present." This lesson became especially important to Paul in his later years, as he learned to appreciate the simple moments in life. A walk in nature, time with family, or playing music just for the joy of it, not for an audience. Thinking about the decades since George's passing, McCartney admits how deeply Harrison influenced his outlook on life. "George taught me patience. He taught me to slow down, to appreciate things like a garden, a sunset, a simple melody. I used to rush through everything, always thinking about the next song or the next tour. George would say, 'Just be here now, Paul.' I didn't get it then, but I do now." At 83, McCartney speaks not as a Beatle, but as a man who has loved, lost, and learned. His memories of George are no longer colored by the rivalry or regrets of youth. They are softened by gratitude. The years have given him perspective, allowing him to see their friendship for what it truly was. Complex, sometimes difficult, but ultimately rooted in deep love and respect. "I miss him every day," Paul says, "but when I play his songs, when I think of him laughing, it feels like he's still around. He's in the music. He's in the air, in revealing this truth." McCartney doesn't just honor his old friend. He completes a circle that began in the smoky clubs of Liverpool and ended in the quiet peace of forgiveness. For him, George Harrison was never just the quiet Beatle. He was a soulmate, a musical partner, and ultimately a teacher. And as McCartney's own journey nears its closing act, his words remind the world that love, even in its most complicated forms, is the truest legacy the Beatles ever left behind. Their story is not just about music or fame, but about human connection, growth, and the healing power of forgiveness. If Paul McCartney's words about George Harrison touched your heart, Share this story with someone who loves the Beatles or understands the value of true friendship. Let us know in the comments which Beatles song means the most to you, and why. And if you want to hear more untold stories about the legends who shaped music history, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. And so do the memories. Thank you for listening. And remember, as George would say, all things must pass, but love remains forever.